I am joined today by Neil Munz Jones. Really happy to have you with us today, Neil.
Thank you, Paul.
And let me quickly introduce Neil to you. So Neil is a experienced consultant with more than 15 years experience in this consulting industry, and has a lot of experience in the global consulting space. I think some specific experience in the do-it-yourself space, but Neil is also accomplished as a public speaker and a writer of the book The Reluctant Network, which I absolutely enjoy a lot, and I'm still, Neil, giving this often to some of our coachees. So really happy that you're joining us today. And Neil has also become part of our community since the beginning of this year. So the Ikigai Coach of the month, December, Neil.
Thank you, Paul.
So my first question, perhaps, Neil, is how did you end up with starting to use the Ikigai methodology in your practice?
Okay, yeah, no, that's great. So I'll just tell a little bit about my story, how I got here. And I want to just start with a quote that I was at a conference a few years ago, and it was the CEO of WD-40, you know, the lubricant spray thing, and it was a DIY conference. So I thought he'd talk about lubricants, but he talked about leadership. And he said some really fascinating stuff, but the one I wrote down that I tell a lot of people is, he says, life is a gift, don't send it back unwrapped. The gentleman, Gary Ridge, the CEO of WD-40, and to me that kind of sums up the whole ethos of Ikigai. And whilst I've done 15 years of consulting, I had 20 years before that in various corporate roles. And if you look at the two sort of Ikigai first things you start with, say you're good at it. And yeah, I was pretty good at the jobs I did, but in those days we never asked about, do you love it? And if I think back in those days, I wouldn't have given any of those jobs more than a 7 out of 10 in terms of that you love it. And so when I was 35, I wrote down my goals. In 10 years' time, I want to run my own business, consulting, teach in a business school, write a book. And it took me it took me 5 years to get there. And it was only because I got made redundant that I started. So I feel like I sort of stumbled into my Ikigai, because if I look at what I do now, the teaching, the consulting, absolutely, 9.5 out of 10 for I love it. I really love what I'm doing, and I think I'm pretty good at it as well. So as I said, I feel like I stumbled into my Ikigai, and so what I think is great about it is it gives it a structure and a framework to help work with people to figure out not just what you're good at, but also what you're passionate about. And I think that's what's been really nice. I've got kids who've all sort of fairly much grown up now, but in school, when we go to the parents' evening, the teachers always say, what do your kids love? Do what they love. Whereas before it was, what are you good at? Took the passion. So I think, as I say, it's just a great framework to help people figure out, your mojo, your Ikigai, your purpose, whatever you want to call it. But I look at the last 15 years of my life, and I love the work that I do, but also the fact it gives me time. My office is at home, and I can coach my kids at sport. I've sung in a choir with my wife. So all things that I wouldn't have done if I'd stayed in corporate.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and I mean, it's you living the life you want, right? Living the life you want, and it's the holistic part, I think, that's quite powerful in the Ikigai approach. So if I would look at Ikigai and connect it to the book you wrote, The Reluctant Networker, and I really find it fascinating also to think about how could you kind of use the Ikigai framework and connect it to the Reluctant Network, the work you've done in that space, and what do you think? How could this interact with each other? Or perhaps strengthen each other? Yeah.
So two observations. If I look at this, what I've been doing for the last 15 years, this sort of mix of consulting and coaching and teaching, and just what I love to do. When I give my talks about networking, I say networking is like the glue that allows me to do what I love. Because when you work for yourself, it's all about your network. All my projects, talks, coaching, everything comes from networking. So it's absolutely been a fundamental enabler to allow me to do what I love to do. And I think from a sort of linking it up with the Ikigai, where it comes really well in the sort of second phase. So once you've figured out what your Ikigai is, you're then Ikigai into action. You actually need to do some things. And if your Ikigai tells you you want to do something totally different, make a career change, all of the books, literature will say, network. If you want to make a big change, networking has to be the way to do it. You know, if you just suddenly turn up and apply for a job that you've seen on LinkedIn or whatever, and you don't have the relevant skills, you're not going to get hired. If you talk to people in your network, all of a sudden there's all these other opportunities that start to appear. So I think, as I say, it's it's an enabler, that network, to help you do that. And I think the other part of it is you can then, you're making it easy for people to help you. So what I've found, so as I said, my son's just about joining the workforce, and my eldest son, we went through the Ikigai together, and out of that, it came out he wants to do marketing in sports. And all of a sudden, that's really easy. So then I can, look through my contacts. He spoke to his godfather. His godfather says, "Oh, I can help you," because it's very targeted. So you're making it easy for people to help you by having this clear definition of what your Ikigai is. And then I think that probably even the most important bit is it's your passion. And so when you then get to talk to somebody through an introduction, through your networking, your passion will come through, and that's really energizing, and people will engage with that, and they'll want to help you. So as I say, I think I can see how it fits nicely. Once you've done your Ikigai, networking can be a real tool to help you get there.
Yeah, no, I believe so too. And like you said, I think the passion part, as long as you're doing what you really want to do, when you're good at it, and it makes, there's an economic engine to make a living with that, that's fantastic, I think. And then the networking can really help you to actually get there, right? Because dreaming about it is one, but actually getting there is the second part that is just as important. So
yeah.
So really nice to talk to you about all this, Neil, and thanks for joining me for this month's Ikigai Coach of the Month. And I'm sure we will be connecting soon again. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Paul. Have a good day. Bye.